Evening, hello, good evening. Welcome to tonight's session on self-tuning your Subaru. So if you're interested in tuning your Subaru yourself, stick around. You can ask whatever questions you want. I will give you my honest opinion on an answer. If I can answer it, if I can't answer it, I'll tell you. Yeah, if you're not interested in self-tuning your Subaru, still stick around. It's useful to learn about tuning to actually make it a more pleasurable experience to own a Subaru, because the more knowledge the better. And Subarus aren't easy cars like a German car where you just start it and run it. They take a bit of TLC. So the more knowledge the better, which is why I wanted to do these sessions, sharing the experience that I've built up over 18 years of tuning Subarus. I tune Subarus day in, day out. I've been on the dyno all day today and all day yesterday, tuning Subarus. It's what I do. So you've seen that in some of the videos I do, and these live sessions are just my way of trying to answer as many questions that people can fire at me as possible in approximately an hour. Sometimes it runs over a bit, but so if you've got a question, pop a Q in the front of the question, just so that I can see that it's a question and easily tick it, because if I'm trying to answer questions and they're all appearing on the screen next to me, it's difficult to see them. These sessions do tend to get quite busy, so get your question in early, basically, rather than like right at the last minute. What I was going to say was, in the UK, I tune anything from GC8 Subaru, Imprezas and old Legacies, twin turbo Legacies. I've got one myself, the Blitzen, which I'll have an update on very shortly. Right the way through, Foresters, Legacies, Imprezas, up until the VA chassis. So the VB chassis was never imported to the UK, and we'll probably need to wait a few years before they start coming into the country, and I personally can't wait. So I'm very envious of you guys in the States and Japan and some other parts of the world. I think Australia, they got the VB as well. So yeah, very, very jealous of that. So ECU wise, I use open source software. I use Ecutech, I use Cyvex, Link, some Haltech, but that tends to be the main ones in the UK. ESL I've done on the classic cars. So any questions on those? I know there's lots of those around the world where people self-tune. So yeah, fire away, questions galore. The objective by the end of the hour is for me to lose my voice. Quite often happens. So I have had a couple of questions beforehand, but I see we've already got some questions in the chat. There seems to be quite a few people in here already, which is great. So welcome. If you're new here, pop in the comments just where you're from. It's always nice to know where in the world people are listening and watching from. It shocks and amazes me every time. I think we've already seen someone from, Alexander from Namibia. So I think Namibia is a new one for me. So welcome. So yeah. Right. Okay. Got a couple of questions there. I will start off with a couple of questions that I was given beforehand. And I'll start off with this one. Right, so Wigwam93 says, I've got a lot of mods including the flex fuel sensor and also want to switch to speed density. How difficult to switch over and where to start? There was a bit more to the question, like whether to start with normal fuel and then tune 385. But the way, if you're new to tuning it yourself, where I would always recommend people to start is rather than jumping straight in with speed density, because it can get complicated very quickly. And unless you know what you're doing, it's not really going to make perfect sense straight away. So where I would start is getting it mapped up on the standard setup, so a MAF-based tune, and using that to build up the knowledge, understanding what to data log, what changes when you're making changes in the ROM, how to control things before then moving over to speed density. You may need to redo most of the tables, but you'll know why you're doing them, and that's the important part, because once you've figured out why, you can map anything, whether that's standard ECU or link or Cyvex. You know, every ECU is essentially just controlling fuel and ignition, boost, cams if you've got VVT cams. So once you've figured out what's going on and why you're changing things and what you're trying to get to, then you can, you know, move on to more complicated things. But I wouldn't personally start on Carberry or Merc mod or Dime mod or whatever. Start with the basics, you know, the MAF based tune. So understanding what the MAF sensor curve does, understanding the fueling, where you're trying to get to target wise, understanding the effects of ignition timing, how to control the boost before moving on to complicated things. And then, yeah, once you've done that and moving over to speed density, start with normal fuel, get that map right, then map it for E85 or E50 or methanol or whatever the chosen alcohol based fuel, and then make sure that the flex fuel sensor is set up properly. But I would start first and foremost with a normal map on there, so MAF based tune. So hopefully that's answered that one for you. Nothing against Carberry. I do them a lot myself, but you know, I did one this afternoon, in fact, but that was primarily because the MAF sensor on this particular car wasn't working particularly accurately. So it was either send the customer away, buy a new MAF, or sort it on Carberry, which is what I did in the end. Right, okay. Okay, a few more questions in here. Hi Keller, how you doing, mate? Hi Simon. So Simon, thank you very much. Yep, no problem, mate. Luxury, yep. Anyway, right. Okay, so questions. Right, Boosted Rex 94, what's up, man? I really appreciate these videos. My pleasure. I absolutely finish these live sessions buzzing. It takes me ages to get to sleep. Will an axle back exhaust need a tune if leaving everything else on stock? Just basically deleting the mufflers. Thank you. If you can answer this question. Yeah, I can answer it. It shouldn't need a tune, but it depends on, you know, is the 94 the age of the car, or is that your year of birth or some other significant date? If it's 94 Impreza on the 94 ECU, it will probably be fine. But I would always recommend at least getting it checked. You know, get a set of deck cans on there, make a set. You know, I've done a video on that. Watch it, make a set. That's so valuable. To actually have the deck cans and listen for the deck rather than relying on what the ECU is telling you, because the ECU lies a lot. And check out the air fuel ratio, make sure it's reading right. So check it out would be my recommendation. Might not need a tune, it might need a tune, but it's worth at least checking. Right, had a question from Ben Carmichael in the Academy. I don't know whether you've seen the Academy, join blah blah blah. The Academy, if you're interested in self-tuning and you're serious about going through the steps of learning and how to do it, then I fully recommend joining that. It's a few pounds a month to join, but there's much more access to more detailed videos, absolute detail, live streams. You know, did one on Monday on using Excel for log viewing. I've done them on the effect of VVT time and those sort of things. But if you're interested in really going down the route of that, then click on the join button below. It's a monthly charge, so you know, up for that. But anyway, Ben's in the Academy. Had a question about the idling on his Hawkeye STI. which was the one that we did with the front mount versus the top mount intercooler. But when it blips the throttle, the revs can drop down to 300 RPM and then just come back up. So this is quite a common thing on the drive-by-wire cars when you start modifying them, like with bigger injectors and bigger induction kits, those kind of thing. And it's something that I'll swap over to map top to show you, Ben, what the solutions could be. So if I click on that one, then we come over to the map top. Right, let's get rid of your question for a second. Oh, let's remove that one. Right. Okay, so this is a standard open source map for a Hawkeye STI. So you can see you've just got idle targets. Now these are useful to adapt, but there's not a lot of change in there. So it's just a target map. There's nothing else that controls how it reacts on idle. But if I open up ECU Tech software, which I'm a ECU Tech dealer, on the idle control side of things, there's extra tables because ECU Tech have discovered the XML for those and have put them in the software. It doesn't mean that it doesn't exist in the standard map. This is a standard map. It's just the Ecutech software reveals those maps. So you've got this table, which is a idle stability. So it's controlling how the drive-by-wire throttle reacts to movement and rate of change of RPM. So that's a very useful table for smoothing out idle control. And there's two other tables which are particularly useful. So an idle MAF grams per second that will enable it to target the MAF values much better on the rundown and when you drop in the clutch or dip in the clutch, and also a load point of view, which is also a target. So if these are set too close to what the actual values are for idle, it'll be much more stable. So these maps do exist on the standard ROM. It's just on the standard XML definitions in ROM Raider and ECU Flash. They haven't been revealed. People haven't found them or discovered a need for finding them, but they are around in the map. So I'm going to try and find the XML for these over the course of the next few weeks. And yeah, hopefully we'll be able to make that available to you, Ben. Hope that is useful. Obviously in the ROM Raider forum there's some super geeks that will spend days on end trawling through XML or hexadecimal to find these maps. So I will try and find them. Right. Okay, so next question. What have we got? Let's just pick up a couple of questions in there. Okay, yeah, Callan. Yeah, the HP Academy do a fantastic course, but what I try and do with the Academy is kind of like a real world tuning rather than classroom tuning. So real world, real Subaru world, I only map Subarus or, things with Subaru engines in, like kit cars or camper vans or, Vauxhall Astras that have had a complete body transplant onto a Subaru chassis. So yeah, what I do with the Academy is kind of like a guided learning rather than I'm going to teach you this today or that today or this, that and the other. So yeah, guided learning. So hand holding. I had one of the Academy members up at the dyno with me today, spending a few hours while he mapped his car on the dyno with me next to him, metaphorically holding his hand. He mapped it. I was just there for guidance. So if you're in the UK and you're mapping your own car, then I'm happy to do that. I have no issues with holding secrets or whatever. You know, if I know the answer, I'll tell you. Right. Bum, 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 bum. Right. Yeah, merchandise is available, as Callan says. Yeah. It's very good. I have lots of t-shirts and hoodies and mugs and whatever else. Right, so let's stop doing the selling thing to you. Right, Neil asked a question, but it was too late last time. You said you run my Forester SCI 97 octane map sometimes. There isn't a lot of spare space in the ECU for switchable maps on the Forester SCI. It's not a full 32-bit ROM. It's a 512 megabyte ROM. So on the standard sort of setup, it isn't possible. But if you've got a Tactrix cable, it's very easy to swap between the maps. You know, you just load the 95 RON map, or the 97 RON, or the 99, or the methanol map, and that's exactly what I do with mine. You know, if I'm going on a long trip, I don't really like putting V-power in to do boring miles, so I put a lower octane map on there. And if I want to put my foot down on the way, then I'll know it's at least safe. There's not really enough room in the standard map to do that, Neil. Right. Okay, Phil Lynn says, what percentage of drivetrain losses do you use for wheel horsepower to brake horsepower? If you saw the video that I did where I compared Dynajet to Dynadynamics, the wheel horsepower for both dynos was different. It's like 270 something on Dynadynamics, and 270 on Dynajet, and 255 I think on Dynadynamics. So there isn't a standard like add 25% or whatever. On the Dynajet, because my car hadn't changed between the two, it was the day after, it works out about 20%. On the Dynadynamics, it's about 27%, because that actually calculates a flywheel horsepower figure. But they're all wrong, and they're all right. The purpose is to see a before and after. Ignore the actual complete figures, in my opinion. Now, if you're on a Maha dyno, the wheel horsepower figure on a Maha dyno is massively low, and the wheel horsepower figure on a Daztec dyno is massively high. They all vary. That's why I don't like comparing wheel horsepower figures, because you can't compare them. If you're on Dynajet, is it uncorrected? Is it STD? Is it SAE? And unless you're asking those questions, it's open to abuse, and it does get abused. Right, good question, Majid Aziz. If you're parking a Subaru up over between 6 to 8 months at a time, how many times would you start it in this time, and how long, etc., plus what are the things to do, how much fuel in tank, etc. I would leave it. The problem with fuel in the tank is if you leave the fuel level low in the tank, then the tank is able to corrode in the bits that hasn't got fuel in. But if you leave it high in the tank, then like for 6 to 8 months, then that fuel's dead. Do not put your foot down on that fuel. The octane is going to be way lower. The water content's going to be much higher. It's not going to be very nice fuel at all. It'll struggle to start because the fuel would have gone off. My Blitzen was, I think, sat for 5 years and not started in that time because of the dash fire. It started eventually, coughed and spluttered, and yeah, it's not nice. What would I do? I'd probably leave it with, at least half a tank of fuel in if it was over that period of time, and drain it and throw it away, or chuck it in the lawnmower, or a car that it doesn't matter in. How many times would I start it? I'd probably start it at least once a month just to get it up to temperature and make sure it's happy. But yeah, expect to throw the fuel away at the end of that. Certainly don't leave methanol or whatever in the tank. Right, evening Duncan. Occasionally my 2003 Spec C feels like it's down on power, like it's heat soaked, but next time I floor it I have full power again. Does this sound like a sensor or a map issue? It may not be either. It could be just the map is set up. Like if it is heat soak, then the map will be set up to reduce ignition timing if the temperatures under the bonnet or the intake temperatures are too high. So it will drop out sort of 3, 4, 5 degrees of ignition timing. It may even have the same compensations put in there for intake temperature for boost control, so it might be dropping the wastegate duty. It could be like detonation. If it's detting, like poor fuel quality, it will drop the ignition advanced multiplier down, and that will drop the ignition down. It might be a heat shield. It could be a lot of different things. Recommendation would be get a Tactrix cable on the laptop, free software, ROM Radar, data log it, and see what's going on, because the data will tell everything, rather than guessing and changing lots of sensors, because that gets really expensive. A Tactrix cable, just for data logging, you can use a cheap Amazon one, and they're like 20 quid. And it will work enough for data logging. It won't let you read a ROM or flash a ROM onto the card, but it will be fine for data logging. And the data will tell you what's going on. I'd much rather recommend going down that route rather than, it could be the MAF sensor, you buy a new MAF, or it could be the O2 sensor, you buy a new O2, it could be the map sensor, throttle, it could be a million things, but the data will tell you which one of those things it could be, or most likely to be. Right, Retro Scooby says, how different is the new age engine compared to the classic? My classic has had a 2005 blob eye swap. The core of the engine is essentially the same. The rods are stronger on the new age. The crank support and the thrust bearings are stronger. But the essential block is essentially the same. The main core block. Heads are different, cams are different, cam followers are different. They got better as time went on. They're essentially the same, but the newer engine is stronger and better designed because Subaru got better at designing them. Right, how are we doing with live questions? Right. Okay, right. Donna NL. On a 2006 STI, going from a VF39 turbo to a TD05 18G, will it need bigger side feed injectors like 750 cc for 350 to 400? and if other injectors are needed, is it worth it to convert to top feed? It says 2006 Impreza STI. It should be top feed anyway, but yeah, the bigger side feed injectors are not very good in my opinion. So if you're needing to go to larger injectors for fuel flow, then recommendation is always the top feed. There are lovely top feed injectors, and by the time you do the conversion, it's worth it for the extra quality of the injectors, the better spray patterns. The bigger side feed injectors, I've seen quite a few issues where the end of the injector nozzle comes off, hydrolocks the bore, and yeah, that's game over for an engine, particularly if it happens on boost. But yeah, top feed injectors definitely. 750 cc's would be perfect for 400 horsepower, but yeah, top feed would be a much better solution. Right, Ian Boyce says, how do I get pops and bangs on my 2006 Turbo EJ 20 WRX? Have a look at the video that I did on pops and bangs. That should point you in the right directions. There is a table on my Forester map that wouldn't be available on yours, which is like the overrun fueling, but that is available in some of the XML definitions that are around, but at the very least you can make it so that it will pop and bang quite nicely with just the tiniest touch of the throttle pedal. Very easy to do that quite a lot. Right, Brian Lara, okay, have you tuned or tuned any of the new engines, the FA2024 DIT? FA20 in the BRZ, that's all I've done at the moment, because Subaru in their great wisdom decided to give up on the UK market, even though we're probably the ones that generated the most worldwide publicity with what ProDrive did with the rally cars. So yeah, we haven't got the FA24 yet. But as soon as they're available to bring into the country and import, I'll be bringing as many of them in as I can, because I think it's an awesome engine and I can't wait to tune it. The FA20, yeah, works well, but I think the 24 is a much better, much stronger engine. Right, okay, Brandon Letner. Right, question 08 FXT, Forester XT, Cobb intake MAF housing and VF48 turbo have a weird lean to rich spot swing causing a stumble. What should I look for in the logs? Okay, can you give me I'm presuming that's when you're putting your foot down, so you're getting the lean to rich bit at that point. If that is the case, then I would be looking at the throttle tip-in as probably a first part, and just see if you can trim that back a bit. If it's going rich when you're putting full throttle, so a large throttle delta, then if you tune back what the amount that is going to put in extra when it sees extra throttle, then that should get rid of that, or certainly alleviate it. So if you're making changes in the map, you know, halve that table, for example, and see what it changes. Obviously keep your old map as a backup to go back to, because you might want to increase it, you know. So that's where I'd look, see what's happening in the logs as far as like the MAF curve, see whether something's amiss on the MAF curve. But it may well be, you know, if it's scaled on the MAF and at steady state on the MAF, it's fine, but it's only when you're putting your foot down that you're getting these swings, then I'd look at tipping. Right. Okay, Janine, your answer on last live Q&A was spot on. Car runs great now. Okay, refresh my memory as to what I was right with. But I'm glad. I hate seeing Subarus that aren't running properly. And, you know, I hate seeing people being given wrong advice. Oh, you change this, change that, change this. And it's like, no, you just need to kind of slow down, get some data, see what's actually happening. And then a lot of the times the resolution is really easy. Okay. Oh, okay. Yeah, math center. Yeah. It's an expensive thing to guess at, but math center, you can, you know, if you've got other Subarus around, then you can generally borrow someone else's just to test it, to see whether it's easy to, or see whether it makes the difference. Right. Okay, so what have we got? Extreme Dev. How are we doing time-wise? God, that's flying by. WRX 1300cc injectors, APS 70mm cold air induction. You think your injectors and MAF scale are set up incorrectly. Right, I've found values for my injectors from Deutschwerk. Do I just input those values and then do my MAF scaling? Oh gosh, I presume they're Deutschwerks injectors. If they are, then yeah, I'd probably go with those latency values, or the dead time values, whatever you want to call it, and then just see what impact that has on the overall. The ideal would have been to like keep the standard injectors in there, then put the cold air induction in, tune for the cold air induction, and obviously the change in the MAF sensor housing size, so that you've got one defined point, and then you're just changing the next one. And then once you've got that set up, put the bigger injectors in, and then you can change that because the MAF sensor sort of setup is all sorted. That would have been the ideal, and if you're tuning it yourself, you can do that. But if you're taking it to someone else, generally, you know, people bring their cars to me and they've changed everything. So you're having to make large assumptions based on experience and say, right, okay, well, let's tune the injectors to start with, then we'll sort the MAF out, and then between them, they might not both be correct, but together they might work almost spot on. But yeah, I'd start with the manufacturer's latency values. It would be a good starting point, unless you can put the standard injectors back in and then tune the MAF from there. All right. Okay, yes, engine from Blob Eye, running a VF35 turbo SCI intercooler, link ECU, 300 horsepower. Would an open air filter gain more horsepower? Would it be worth doing? Okay, is that 300 horsepower at the flywheel or the wheels? Seems pretty low. I would expect a 35 to hit maybe 330, 340 horsepower, brake horsepower. If you're running the standard airbox, it's probably not restricting it too much at that level. You might gain a little bit of horsepower at the top end. I've seen it sort of pretty recently for another Academy member, where we changed the standard airbox for an induction kit. On the standard airbox, he was topped out about 355 horsepower. Changed the induction kit, made 380. So quite a big difference on that particular car. That was a Forester XT. But yeah, I would say you might gain a bit, but not a lot. But I think there's probably other things that need to be done to bring that power up, because that really should be running more than that. in my opinion. Assuming you've got the supporting mods to go with it. Yeah, this is a question from Straight Archer 9807. Why do you think many pro tuners would be mad at you for sharing this level of information? Don't they realise that the majority of people wouldn't even bother trying to learn? Yeah, I don't know why they're mad, but they are. But anyway, I don't care. I'll leave them to be mad. I think people need to know about their cars. I think to own a Subaru, you got to know a bit about the car. You got to know a bit about what's going on. Whether you choose to tune it yourself, it makes no difference to me. Obviously, if everyone's self-tuned, then I'll be out of work. But not everyone is going to, and you know, people that watch this, watch these videos and message me for advice and whatever, they're all over the world, and you know, that's not affecting me. It's just making these cars stay on the road for longer, you know, rather than people blowing up engines or not enjoying the cars. You know, the cars that need to be kept around. And that can only be done with some good knowledge. So I'm happy to share what my experience has been with these. There was another question from Straight Archer. This is something that always gets brought up: cylinder 4 cooling mod. Would I consider speaking to the inventor of the mod? Yes, not a problem. But I am so skeptical about this. I've never seen the need for this particular modification running on a race car up to 850 horsepower. Forester STI at 450 horsepower. Current Forester STI, Legacy GTs. What else have I had? A few different Subarus, and never felt the need, never seen the need. The only cars that I've seen with the cylinder 4 cooling mod have had issues, head gasket issues, or real extreme issues with trying to bleed the system. Very difficult to do with that cylinder 4 cooling mod. So yeah, I'll happily talk to him, but I think I'd be amazed if he can change my mind. Right. Yeah, there aren't many tuning Subaru specialists around the world, really. There are in the States. In the UK, there's a few of us. Across Europe, there's people that dabble in Subarus, but not many people specialise in them. And I think it's one of those cars that you need to know what you're doing. You need to have experience with the engine. I've seen maps that I've downloaded off cars that have come in with running issues or engine rebuilds where, you know, the car's been mapped by an Evo tuner and they've mapped it like they would map an Evo. It doesn't work on a Subaru. They need to be mapped like a Subaru, or they've had flash maps on, which is the worst bloody thing in the world, where they've paid a fortune or a relative fortune for absolute rubbish. Every mapper, every Subaru specialist mapper maps differently. You know, we're all trying to get to a similar objective, and there's variables that you can change, like the fueling, the boost, the ignition, the cam timing. It's not rocket science, but when you're making changes that you have absolutely no idea what it's doing, which is the case with the flash maps, I just think it's really dangerous. All right. Right, okay, Alexander, seeing Chenko. Right, okay. I am wondering about AFR versus boost scale. 11.5 seems to make great and safe power at about 0.93 bar. Yep. Running 99 octane. Do you have any recommendations for, say, 1.6 bar? Generally, like if you're running on 99 octane fuel, if your 11.5 is working fine for you at 0.93, it will probably work fine for you at 1.6 bar. But you need to obviously reduce the ignition timing to account for the fact that the molecules of fuel and air are that much closer together, and the flame travels quicker across the cylinder. So it will need less ignition advance. So that's the bit that you would probably tune down to stop it detonating. You may need to richen it up, but personally I would probably say you could get away with running slightly leaner on 0.9 bar of boost. That isn't much boost. Whereas 1.6 bar, is starting to get to sort of man-sized boost. Sorry for sexist use of words, but it is. Life begins at 2 bar, really. 11.5, 11.4 is what I generally say. 11.3, 11.4 gives a nice margin for error. Yes, I will, Neil. But I just don't see the need for it. You say it works fine on yours, but it would probably work absolutely fine without it. It makes taking the engine in and out really difficult. You extra pipe work, trouble with bleeding it, and if Don wants to have a chat with me, happy to chat. Right, what could be limiting power to 300 horsepower? Right, the 300 horsepower, it could be the dyno that you're reading it on reads low. It could be the fuel quality. It could be not very much boost. It could be not very much ignition time, which could be linked to the fuel quality. It could be like super high compression engine, but with low fuel quality, in which case you're hardly going to get any ignition in there at all. It could be a lot of different things. Without seeing the dyno graphs or like boost overlay and whatever it'd be difficult to actually say or give you some advice as to what's gone on. But the 300 horsepower, if that's genuinely and comparable with other dynos, then I think 300 is a little bit low for that turbo. It should be doing more than that, in my opinion. Any Subaru model you would love to own? Yeah, RAR, Hawkeye, JDM, that's the one. Still want one of those. I will have one day, but they are just going up massively in money. Loved my Hawkeye, but a JDM RAR is just the sweetest thing. People talk about Subaru Burble, JDM, with the twin scroll headers. It just sounds like a super bike when you got 8,500 rev limit. Just absolutely beautiful. Right, what years of Subaru do I see the most? At the moment, what did I do today? 2002 WRX, 2004 WRX, generally 2004, 2005 and 6 are generally the ones that I see the most of. Some hatches, got a nice JDM hatch to do tomorrow, STI, and some really nice classic GC8s that have been through the whole restoration thing, because that's the way. I watched a Flat Irons video a while back about what the future of the Subaru world is, and the future of the Subaru world in America is probably what the reality is now in the UK, is that the majority of people are keeping these cars on the road, and they're spending good money restoring them and doing like the full underbody restoration like we've done on the Tommy Chiara. Seeing lots of really beautifully restored cars, and GC8s are where it's starting with that. And you know, there'll be years more just to get these and keep these cars on the road, because most modern cars are boring as shit. And Subarus aren't. You know, they're fun cars to drive because you haven't got all the electronic wizardry that's saying, oh, you can't change lane, you can't go around a corner and cut the corner, you've got to stay in it annoys the hell out of me, those cars do. But in the UK we're seeing lots of restoration, and you know, and that will come up and keep coming up until we can start bringing some of the more fun cars in from Japan, because Subaru are not bringing any fun cars in. If you look on the Subaru UK website, it is boring. Yeah, S206, yeah, nice cars, yeah. But the JDM, the way the JDM engine goes is, you know, once you've heard one of those on full chat, you won't want the burble anymore. You'll want the JDM twin scroll setup because it is special. Right, Jose Lopez. Right, hi Duncan. My GC8 you've mapped on idle after some kilometres, still a bit high. And when I turn aircon on, it goes up and down. Other thing, even at night, driving normal fans don't stop. Okay, I need to have a look at that again. Remind me whether we've got a wideband in there, Jose, because I think that might be something that's doing it, particularly with the aircon side of things. Good. I'll see you soon, actually, Mel. I just replied to Scott this evening. Right, follow-up question. Right, Andre, let me have a look. Okay. Okay, so follow-up question. I'm running 16 degrees timing at wide open throttle. Would you recommend to go lower? If that's wide open throttle at 0.93 bar of boost, then yeah, you will find. I really hope you got deck cans on while you're tuning this. In fact, don't tune it without deck cans. Don't rely on the ECU to be taking out ignition timing. They rarely get it right, in my opinion. 16 degrees wide open throttle at what revs? If that's at 4,000, then that's a different. It should be a different value than at 6,000. If it's running a flat 16 degrees, then I'd say there's room to bring it up at certain points. But whatever the timing is at 0.9 bar of boost, then you'll find that you won't be able to run the same amount of ignition timing at 1.6 bar of boost, because it will detonate, and that's not good. Right, Stuart. Right, hi Duncan. I bought a 2005 JDM Hawkeye STI a few weeks ago. Lovely. It's been parked up in a showroom for the last 2 years. Completely stock, has been serviced. What would you recommend to check? I'd check when the cam belt was done. Recommend popping one of those on anyway. If that wasn't changed 2 years ago, then yeah, I'd recommend putting one of those on. Other than that, yeah, get it on the dyno, see what it's doing, make sure everything's fine, and then enjoy it. Beautiful car, very beautiful car. Or you could, if you bring it down to Bournemouth for me, I can run it around for a couple of months for you. Just make sure everything's fine. Right, okay. Oh, a few questions there. Yeah, the restoration side of things, I think we totted up on the Tommy Chiara. It's like 120 hours worth of work to fully strip the underside, get everything off. Fine if you're doing it yourself. If you're paying someone to do that, then you tot up your local hourly rate, and it becomes quite expensive. But some of the GC8s, like the Type R's, the RAs, the values are going up massively in the UK, and good original perfect condition cars are fetching some really strong money now. Yeah, they are completely and utterly soulless. They're for people that just want to get from A to B. And yeah, I don't like them. There's a whole generation of kids that are going to grow up never knowing how to change gear, never knowing any kind of fun from a car, because all it is, their whole car experience is, what's the in-car entertainment system? That's the only fun they'll ever get, apart from trying to figure out how to charge it. Right, so I could rant about electric cars for weeks. Yeah, the Hawkeye STI twin scroll JDM, lovely. Engine is bulletproof on that. You would have a very hard job to kill that. I've mapped those to 600 odd horsepower on a standard block. They are strong, but they're not indestructible, so get it checked out. If it's original, not been mapped for UK fuel, then I would certainly recommend getting it mapped for UK fuel, because they are borderline on the standard map, assuming all the sensors are working correctly. If all the sensors and the fuel pump and the fuel filter aren't working correctly, then it could just tip it beyond the borderline into unsafe. Right. Okay. Right, Shigemazu. What do you consider to be the safe RPM limit of the late model EJ257s in factory form with stock valve train? The valve train isn't really the issue. I had the stock valves and valve springs on my Impreza race car up until about 650 horsepower, I think, and I was taking it up to beyond 8,000. The standard rods aren't good for that, and there are lots of other issues in relation to the 2.5 block, where the liners are only sort of 5mm thick in their thinnest points. I would probably go with the standard 7,000 RPM on a Hawkeye. They brought that down on the hatch, thinking that would solve the issues of some of the Hawkeye 2.5s going bang, but it actually made it worse. But 7,000 seems to be a good sensible stopping point for rev wise on the 257s, because unless you've got a huge turbo on there, the turbo is going to run out of puff by then anyway. Peak power is at about 5.4, 5.5 maybe, so the power's gone, so you might as well change gear and go back into the torque. Right, oh crikey, right, nearly the end. Right, man-sized, but it's a beautiful comment. Yeah, it is man-sized. I had a customer a while back, and he was saying, "Oh, I want to get to 1.9 bar boost." It's like, why stop at 1.9? You got to start with a 2 on that. My race car, I'm at about 2.4 bar of boost with the nitrous as well. The whole thing changes tone and sounds. It gets really violent. Yeah, it's nice to run low boost occasionally though, because it gives you a nice contrast. If you ran the 2.2 bar boost all the time, then you get bored of it ish quickly. So yeah, running a lower boost like 1.2, 1.3 is useful. On the Cyvex cars that I do, tend to put in like 3 different boost settings: low, medium, and high, so that just a flick of a rotary knob, you can actually change the boost level. Because generally, most of the time I'm driving around, I'm on low boost or not using boost at all. It's only when you get someone that needs to be taught a lesson that I turn it up. Right. Unfortunately, you're in Ireland. There are tuners over there, dynos over there. If you can get it onto a dyno, get them to get deck cans on there, or make a set of deck cans, make sure it's running happy and safe. It would be a shame to kill the engine for not checking. Get a wideband gauge in there, make sure it's running correct air fuel ratio, and you've probably done enough, to be perfectly honest, if you wanted to keep it standard. If not, there's boats over to the UK and you can bring it over and I'll make it right. Chris, right. Hi, Graham. Actually Duncan, but it's Graham. I answered to many things. Have you mapped a Subaru with a Zola turbo? Yes, many of those. What are your thoughts compared to other turbos? They're a decent turbo. Yeah, mapped quite a few. Sort of I think the 450 turbo was probably the nicer one out of the lot. Works well, works nice, seems to be well built. I haven't been up to a AET for years actually, but yeah, they're decent guys up there and they know how to build turbos. But it's similar to the experience I have with Owen Development's turbos. They're either absolutely amazingly brilliant or not very good at all. I was lucky with my turbo from them. It was flipping awesome. GT37 with a ceramic ball bearing core, and that worked amazingly. But yeah, the Zona's a good turbo, good price point. But depending on what power you're wanting to get to, like the VF 400 would do 420 horsepower. It depends where you're trying to get to. Right, Carl King, how far would you tune a car to run as a daily? Also, which Impreza would you have as a daily? I love my Forester as a daily, because it's, I'm carrying a lot of mapping gear around with me, like spare ECUs, spare parts, toolkits, those kind of things. So that all goes in the back of the Forester really easily. In the early days, I was driving my race car in full Time Attack livery, and that was my daily driver, and I was driving that up and down the country, taking that to map other people's cars. Very expensive from a fuel point of view because it was running about 450-ish horsepower at the time. My previous Forester STR was running about that 450 mark. I used that as a daily driver for a while. I love my Legacy GT as a daily driver because that is ultimately more comfortable. Yeah, I probably wouldn't use Impreza as a daily. I think it's more of a enjoyment weekend car. I need to carry too much stuff. All right. I think we're going to overrun, aren't we? Yeah, we're going to overrun. So yeah, Hope you had a dinner beforehand. Right. Okay, hold on. Right, I found a little crack on the restrictor pill side tube. Yeah, I can't remember off the top of my head what we targeted on that, Jose. I would have thought 1.4 would be around the region that I targeted. So that crack on the restrictor pill side of the pipe from the turbo has happened after mapping. So replacing that and repairing that would just bring it back to where we were map wise. But happy to come over and check it out for you, no problem at all. Right, hi Duncan, any recommendation on plug and play side feed injectors for JDM Legacy GT 750cc or 850cc? It depends where you're trying to get to power wise. The bigger injector side feed injectors, just going back to to a previous question, like the top feed injectors are much better spray pattern, much nicer injectors. The bigger side feed injectors tend to be sort of 20-30-year-old piece of the kit and not incredibly good. So if you can go side feed, top feed, then go top feed. That would be my recommendation. Right, okay, so last questions, guys. Right, John Lanley. Hi Duncan, I tried to reply to your message a couple of months back, but don't think you got it. Okay, yeah, John, however you message me again, or WhatsApp me, or Facebook message, or text message, or message me on here, or yeah, send a pigeon or whatever. But yeah, send me the message again, and I'll get to it as soon as I can. It's massively busy at the moment as far as like start of the season, so I'm a bit behind with answering emails and messages. So apologies if you're waiting on a reply from me. But yeah, send it over. I'd love to sort the car out for you. So what you're saying, Duncan, is we need to change our boost target to 2 bar minimum. Yeah. No. Right. What compression ratio is required, ideal for 2 bar? It depends on what fuel you're running. If you're just going to run that on like 99 RON fuel in the UK or 93 octane in the US or whatever, then you probably want to be no more than 8.5, because you'll find it really hard to tune otherwise. If you are running it on E85 or like methanol 50% mix, whatever, you might be able to get away with a higher compression ratio, but sort of 9:1 probably would be the maximum. But if you're running 9:1 compression ratio on less than 99 quality fuel, you're going to struggle to make the power because it just will not take ignition timing. Right. Yeah, don't have the stock parts anymore. Yeah, in which case, yeah, pick one as a point, whether it be the injectors or the MAF scale, and say that's done, and then tune the other one, and somewhere between the two, it'll take a bit of time to do it and get it right, but you should be able to get there eventually. No problem. If you're not tuning it yourself, trying to accumulate knowledge before getting the car tuned by one of our local tuners running Unichip at this stage. Get rid of the Unichip. Get the Tatrix open source or aftermarket ECU, but Unichip just takes the existing sensor readings, throws them away, and just feeds bullshit figures to the ECU. It's not a solution. Whenever I see those on a car, I just rip them off. I wouldn't ever put one of those on when the ability is there to tune the car properly with proper software, tune all the tables. Why would you put something that's really set for diesel tuning on there? Right, Dan. Hi, Duncan. VF39 on my Bugger WRX with everything to support. It was live mapped by Bob. Supposed to be 350 horsepower, but never dynoed. Does this sound right? Bob uses road dyno software. Road dyno software, you've got to know the exact weight of the car, the exact volume of the fuel that's in the tank, all the fluids, the weight of the driver, the passenger, any bits in the car, any difference in the ride height is going to change the aerodynamics. Any difference in the rolling resistance of the tyres is going to change all of that. So giving power figures based on a road dyno figure, it's just, you might as well just do that. Just hold your finger up in the air. Probably a little bit optimistic, but bring it up to the dyno. I can put it on the dyno. We'll see what it actually does, and take it from there. Yeah. Right, Sports Cat, worth replacing with a new one or go decap. Mine has started rattling like a mustard. I should say, as a responsible tuner, to put a Sports Cat on there to be, I would go decap, sell it. You'll get money back for that from a metal merchant in the UK, and get hold of another one if you need to put it on there for MOT purposes. Right. Alright, Matty B, what's the difference between twin scroll and twin entry? Twin scroll is a proper turbo design where the actual compressor housing has two entries to the vanes. The twin entry turbos were just a way of fitting a single scroll turbo onto twin headers. The twin entry turbos, you might as well just put a single scroll turbo on there. The twin entries are disappointing in my view. Twin scroll is a much better way to do it. If you've got twin scroll, you don't need to change your turbo map. What can you get from a VF39? Generally they're sort of 340-ish turbos. Most of the VFs are around that. Sometimes it might be a good one, it might be a bad one, it might be on a good car, it might be on a less than good car. So that's why Subaru power results vary so massively. I could have 10 blob-eye WRXs on there with the exact same modifications from the same manufacturers, and there'll be 20-30 horsepower difference between the best performing one and the worst. I don't know why that is. It's just the way it is. Bring it up to the dyno, strap it on, and I'll say what it's doing, and might be able to give some idea of what it could do. Any ideas why my engine makes a tock noise at cold start and goes away 1 minute or less? Use 1060 liquid moly. Piston slap, could be clutch release bearing, could also do that. I'm presuming that's not bottom end rattle, because that has an altogether different sound and doesn't tend to go away like that. Some of the cam idlers can make a noise as well. I would say piston slap is probably the most likely. Right, okay, I think I'm going to call that as the end of the session. If you've got any other questions about self-tuning, whatever related questions to that, then pop them in the comments below. I will try and answer every single one of them to the best of my abilities. If you got any questions about joining the academy, then click on the join button below. It will give you various options for what to do, and there's lots of different videos, a separate live stream each week, most weeks on that, plus the Discord server, where you can chat and ask questions, and there's a big thriving community there, so there's always people in there and always lots going on. But anyway, thank you for joining me, and hopefully I'll see you in the next video next week.